I think the allegations were that some folks were being charged and a lot of issues were being left out of the documents or the charging documents or the cases that would have embarrassed some. Whether all of that is true or not, I don't know, because the Justice Department isn't giving us the documents.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I have 33 seconds left. Let the record reflect. In Iowa, we have a saying: if it looks like a pig, if it sounds like a pig, and if it smells like a pig, it's probably a pig. And I think, based on what I read today, something smells here. I yield back my time.
I thank the gentleman from Iowa. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to establish what the standard should be. We understand here we had a president of the United States on the one hand and a secretary of state on the other. It was a unique situation. So the absence of a standard is pretty clear. So we got to look at the modus operandi for the foundation itself, because there were bound to be instances in which a foundation would look as though it was receiving some favoritism. And that's what happens, I suppose, when you have two very prominent people operating at this high corridor. So I thought I'd look at internal reviews by the Clinton Foundation. Now, these were voluntary reviews, and that's what interested me. Apparently, the foundation noted some issues, that there weren't as many governing board meetings as there should be. There was not timely reporting of conflicts of interest. Those are the kinds of things that might have been found by some investigation, but these were found by voluntary internal reviews by the foundation itself. Here again, I'm looking for a standard as to how a foundation should act in this kind of situation. Professor Hackney, do you think the kinds of internal reviews that were conducted by the Clinton Foundation are best practices? Is that how it should be done?
So again, I don't want to speak specifically to the Clinton Foundation, but as someone who actually goes out and trains directors to be directors of nonprofits, I certainly encourage rigorous and engaged discussion of a board. A board should be engaged in what's going on. The nature of various businesses is you'll have problems. I'm sure each of the members have had challenges in their organizations that they run, and it's important to do that kind of oversight. I deeply appreciate, as Mr. Heiss had noted, this committee is important. Doing the oversight is really important. It makes a difference in the functionality both of the government and the operations out there.
Thank you very much. That goes well beyond my question.
Yep.
Now, you look at the review that the Clinton Foundation did, it's fair to ask, well, what resulted? And here I am informed that they updated their conflict of interest policy. They reformed their vetting and gift acceptance policy. I'm not asking you to look at those particular reforms in a context you don't have. But are those the kinds of reforms or changes, I apologize for this cold, that you would expect a charity to make after commissioning reforms of the kind that I have just indicated?
Not as the Clinton Foundation, but I highly recommend a good conflict of interest policy and a good gift acceptance policy. They're critical to a nonprofit operation.
So there was always, given the fact that one was the president and one was the secretary, had been the president and one had been the secretary of state, you can see how difficult this situation was. Some employees who were interviewed had, in fact, this is information the committee has received, raised concerns about donors who might have an expectation of a quid pro quo benefit in return for gifts. Again, this is almost inherent in these two high-level officials operating in the same space. On the other hand, no evidence of a quid pro quo was ever found. So I have to ask you that, let me speak as a member of Congress. I'm sure that when some give contributions to me, they have an expectation of a quid pro quo. Does that mean that I am in fact guilty of some aura of quid pro quo for accepting such contributions?
So again, as to nonprofits, watching out for people wanting things from you in return is a big part of what you have to worry about in the basic nonprofit, and it becomes much more extreme as you have individuals who have additional power involved. It's a critical question they all have to ask.
And it is, and I can see the space in which these two were operating, Clinton and the Clinton Foundation and the Secretary of State. Mr. Chairman, could I note for the record that the Clinton Foundation has received ratings, 4 out of 4 stars from Charity Navigator, platinum rating from GodStar, an A rating from Charity Watch, and accreditation from the Better Business Bureau for meeting all 20 of its standards of governance, effectiveness, financing, and fundraising. Thank you very much.
I thank the gentlewoman. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gozar, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.